They also set out, and it was the first couple of presenters, first couple of committee members who laid out the evidence that he knew that he lost. And there were all sorts of, as Jackie said, new pieces of evidence and testimony interspersed with some of the things and witnesses we'd seen before. But then they also did an incredibly effective job. I think this was in Congresswoman Luria's presentation, showing that he was informed of the opposite of what he would then take to the podium and say to his followers, who it ultimately culminates not just in January 6th, but an ongoing threat of domestic violent extremism with election lies at their heart. Let me play that for my team doing heroic work today. It is number 6.
They specifically raised the Dominion voting machines, which I found to be among the most disturbing allegations. Disturbing in the sense that I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations. I told them that it was crazy stuff, and they were wasting their time on that, and it was doing a grave disservice to the country.
We have a company that's very suspect. Its name is Dominion. With the turn of a dial or the change of a chip, you can press a button for Trump and the vote goes to Biden. What kind of a system is this?
We definitely talked about Antrim County again. That was sort of done at that point because the hand recount had been done and all of that. But we cited back to that to say, you know, this is an example of what people are telling you and what's being filed in some of these court filings that are just not supported by the evidence. And this is the problem. The problem is people keep telling you these things and they turn out not to be true.
In addition, there is the highly troubling matter of Dominion voting systems. In one Michigan county alone, 6,000 votes were switched from Trump to Biden, and the same systems are used in the majority of states in our country.
I went into this and would tell them how crazy some of these allegations were and how ridiculous some of them were. I'm talking about some of them like, more absentee votes were cast in Pennsylvania than there were absentee ballots requests. Stuff like that was just easy to blow up. There was never an indication of interest in what the actual facts were.
There were more votes than there were voters. Think of that. You had more votes than you had voters. That's an easy one to figure. And by the thousands.
Then he raised the big vote dump, as he called it, in Detroit. And that, he said people saw boxes coming into the counting station at all hours of the morning. And I said, Mr. President, there are 630 precincts in Detroit, and unlike elsewhere in the state, they centralized the counting process, so they're not counted in each precinct. They're moved to counting stations, and so the normal process would involve boxes coming in at all different hours.
This is Michigan. At 6:31 in the morning, a vote dump of 149,772 votes came in unexpectedly.
With regard to Georgia, we looked at the tape, we interviewed the witnesses. There is no suitcase. The president kept fixating on this suitcase that supposedly had fraudulent ballots and that the suitcase was rolled out from under the table. And I said, no, sir, there is no suitcase. You can watch that video over and over. There is no suitcase. There is a wheeled bin where they carry the ballots, and that's just how they move ballots around that facility. There's nothing suspicious about that at all.
Election officials pull boxes, Democrats, and suitcases of ballots out from under a table. You all saw it on television. Totally fraudulent.
What's amazing to me about this isn't just the stupid stuff Trump is saying and the fact that his advisors know the truth. It's that all this sworn testimony includes this. And I said, sir. And from Barr, and I told him, Mr. President. And from Donahue over and over again. And I said, no, sir, Mr. President. I mean, this is what they told him, sworn congressional testimony.
Yeah, so, I mean, this section that you just played really spoke to me as a former prosecutor, because the way you build a case to show criminal intent is you show what is the person saying publicly and what do they know privately. And here, that sort of juxtaposition of what he's saying publicly and what he's told privately felt to me like a summation in a criminal case. Over and over again, what he's saying is not true, and you have Republican senior advisors who are loyal to him telling him over and over again, not just their opinion, but factually what is true and what is not true. And then you have Donald Trump saying the opposite. In terms of showing premeditation and showing that he did not believe that he actually won, these sort of repeated lies are going to be devastating. If Merrick Garland, pulls the trigger on this kind of case, this is really strong evidence.
I think we have to back up too and help our viewers understand it was unprecedented for DOJ to be investigating all of his lunacy. DOJ usually doesn't do that, but they started even before the election. So the reason they know all of the craziest stuff is absolute horse poo-poo, as Nancy Pelosi called it today, is because they took the unprecedented step, another contortion of the Justice Department under Trump, and investigated it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's one where, Bill Barr, in some ways, he was doing the wrong thing, but it ended up being something that was useful because he wanted to get ahead of this in terms of, is this going to provide any sort of useful information for the former president? And then it turned out they actually had looked at this and found no fraud that could in any way have undermined the investigation. And at that point, you had just way too many senior people at the department who were like, I did not sign up for that. I'm in for a lot of policies and even some things that go beyond policies, but not overthrowing an election.
What do you do then with all this testimony from the most senior people around Trump who have testified now under oath before a congressional committee that they told Trump each and every one of these litanies of conspiracies were false, that Trump lost 60 lawsuits, many of them presided over by Trump-appointed judges? What do you do with the statements that built to a deadly insurrection on the part of Trump? How do you hold those statements criminally accountable?
So what you need to do is you're going to need to, with respect to each of these people, you want to get the full transcript of what they said in front of Congress, and then you need to really evaluate how they're going to come off as a witness. Some of that's subjective, and some of it is you do a deep dive on how are they going to get attacked, or what are all of the ways in which they have said the opposite or said anything close to the opposite, what other kinds of bad acts have they done, and then you interview them, and in my view, you put them in the grand jury. In public corruption cases, you have to always...
Who would you put in the grand jury from what you heard today?
Everyone. This is what I've learned from public corruption cases is don't trust that at an interview they're going to repeat the same thing. They're going to say they remember different things. They're going to say that the FBI wrote it down wrong, that the transcript's wrong. Certainly it wouldn't be unheard of to just attack the FBI in terms of what happened during the interview. So I'm a big believer in getting it in front of a grand jury that's an independent body, and there's a tape recording, not just a transcript of exactly what the person said. So if you're trying to sort of lock in as much as possible what a witness is going to say, that's a way to do it. They can always say they learned something new afterwards, but it makes it harder. I mean, a grand jury proceeding is, it's under oath. It's quite serious. Somebody has to prepare for it. It's the best way you possibly can to lock people in.
And Cassidy Hutchinson seems so central if you're going to take that step. I mean, she knows that Trump knew he lost. She knows that Meadows knows that Trump lost. And she knows what everyone was doing in terms of the connections to violence. The United States Secret Service, the ex-president himself, Mark Meadows. I mean, she seems to be the one that has visibility into all facets of potential criminality.
And as you probably know very well from having been in the White House, if people were candid, there are many more people like Cassidy Hutchinson who are aware. I mean, this is a fishbowl. This is kudos to her for coming forward and subjecting herself to that kind of scrutiny. But there are going to be other people, and that is really the province of a thorough investigation, is to corroborate her as much as possible, to take some of the burden off, but also to help the jury, reach the right result without having to weigh just one person's testimony that's that close.